Gildan Media, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Unstoppable Organization. Empower your people, engage your customers, and grow your revenue. By Shawn Casemore. Narrated by Lofbomm. Forward. Do you know the best way to empower your people, engage your customers, and grow your top-line revenue? Even if you think you do, you'll find no better insights into creating an unstoppable organization than in this wonderful book by Shawn Casemore. In the 15 chapters of The Unstoppable Organization, Empower Your People, Engage Your Customers, and Grow Your Revenue, Shawn provides tips, tools, and proven strategies for leaders, including providing value, engaging employees online, and empowering your customers and employees to support top-line growth. Shawn starts by deconstructing everything we knew and have been taught about organizational growth. This is quite a beginning to a sometimes personal, sometimes professional treatise to what it is to be a leader in business today. Throughout the book, Shawn asks us to answer important questions, the result of which will determine the ultimate success or failure of our organizations. For instance, how can we avoid becoming enamored with the latest and greatest technology, forgetting about the importance of our people? This is one of those questions that you can bring to your teams and have each member provide answers they believe to be true. Bring all of those answers together, and you may be able to combat forgetting about the importance of people. This is just one of the great insights you'll find in Shawn's book. Listen to it, learn from it, and discover what it takes to be a future-ready leader in an unstoppable organization. Life is good. Marshall Goldsmith. Marshall Goldsmith is the international best-selling author and editor of 36 books, including What Got You Here Won't Get You There and Triggers. Introduction. Since the dawn of time, when traders peddled their wares in exchange for other goods or money, those who own and lead businesses, from the local variety store owner to the head of a multinational corporation, have been attempting to unlock the secrets to growing their business, steadily increasing their sales revenue through time, and consistently capturing market share from their competition. Having worked with executives from across North America, I find that this obsession with growth remains an unlocked mystery for most, which sent me on a quest in search of answers. What I learned throughout my nearly 10-year research is that the secret to growth was available to all organizations, but less obvious to most. The so-called experts who promote themselves as holding the secret to growth suggest it is tied directly to an organization's ability to market and sell its products or services effectively. More specifically, in instances where an organization has a great marketing campaign aligned with a strong brand promise, and is, in turn, supported by strong selling systems to capitalize on the marketing investment. Growth is touted as not only obtainable, but perceivably unstoppable. Interestingly, these same experts often suggest that their own specific process, product, or service is necessary to unlock unstoppable growth for your organization, as long as the business owner or executive is willing to unlock their wallet. However, it would appear from nearly a decade of meeting, working with, and supporting CEOs from around North America that this promise is all too often not the magic pill to unstoppable growth, leaving the perceivably elusive question as to what exactly does an organization need to do to become unstoppable. This isn't to say that companies aren't experiencing revenue growth or increased market share, but in the feedback I've received, it's often unpredictable and unreliable, making growth more of a roller coaster ride rather than a slow climb to the top. Growth in one quarter, for example, might be followed by several quarters with lackluster sales. It would seem that not only do these proposed systems and technologies recommended by the experts not achieve the results suggested, but they add further complexity to a sales and revenue cycle that is becoming more unpredictable. When I wrote my first book, Operational Empowerment, Collaborate, Innovate, and Engage to Beat the Competition, I wanted to help CEOs, executives, and leaders around the world find and apply the tools that are readily at their fingertips in order to build a stronger performing organization. No experts necessary. In that book, I dedicated several chapters to discussing the important role employees hold in helping to grow and sustain a business, and a single chapter sharing examples and practices to identify how employees can support growth in relation to sales, marketing, and customer service. I realize now that a single chapter was not near enough to raise awareness of this opportunity most organizations have, because before you ever worry about building a strong performing organization and team, which my first book was written to define, it's critical to first make sales in order to grow the business itself. There is no sense in perfecting your operating model if you first can't attract and retain customers to bring in consistently growing revenue. This book, The Unstoppable Organization, Empower Your People, Engage Your Customers, and Grow Your Revenue, was written to overcome my mistake and make things right. I want you to not only know, but also understand and apply the not-so-secrets of success that some of the fastest-growing organizations across North America are using, because this is success that you can have as well. One of the benefits of having been a consultant during the last decade of my career is that it has allowed me to connect with literally hundreds of CEOs and executives to learn about their own unique best practices for growth. Practices that are not based on one proposed method or a single proprietary system recommended by an expert, but practical and often overlooked opportunities that have supported growth. This book culminates these best practices that I've heard of, learned, and even applied with clients as a consultant through interventions in which we deconstruct how they approach their market and customers, creating a more powerful engine that will not only grow market share, but also create a repeatable and powerful engine for consistent growth. This isn't about a single process or solution, but rather a culmination of shifts and adjustments in how an organization interacts with customers and employees, and how, in turn, this influences growth. You might be thinking, if this information is so common and practical that it can be documented here, how could you, as a business owner, executive, or business leader, have missed it? Well, to answer this, I want to share a simple example of a client of mine. Sage Natural Wellness. 25 years ago, Kate Ross LeBlanc and Jean-Pierre LeBlanc, the founders of Sage Natural Wellness, shared a passion and a vision that started them on a journey toward global wellness and building a globally recognized brand. Seeking healthier, more effective, and natural solutions to pharmaceutical medicine, they leveraged Jean-Pierre's background in chemistry and Kate's lifelong love for retail, including a natural talent for design and everything beautiful, to blend and bring essential oil remedies to the world. Almost 3 decades later, Kate's original customer service pledge and their commitment to 100% natural formulations remain the founding pillars of the company. This customer-centric approach and commitment to the natural has built an unstoppable organization. Before we go any further, let me point out that the fact they've grown in both areas simultaneously is an accomplishment unto itself that few organizations have been able to achieve. Even Amazon, after dominating online, is only now beginning to consider creating a brick-and-mortar presence, most recently in the grocery sector as of this writing. But in speaking with Kate to better understand their secret formula to such explosive and consistent growth, one thing stands out above all else. The success of Sage is the direct result of the highly talented employees that embrace and live the Sage brand. I know that sounds like an overwhelmingly simple statement, but in Kate's eyes, the success of their organization, from developing their unique products to supporting their global clientele, and even down to identifying new markets to enter, comes back to engaging with her people. What Kate and Jean-Pierre have realized from the start is that a successful organization is built on a successful team, and that this requires more than just hiring experts in their field or holding periodic team-building events. In fact, the key to Sage finding and building their team has been in identifying candidates that are a fit within the culture of Sage, more so than having a specific skill set or level of experience. Experience is important, but being able to work well with the Sage team is the driving force behind determining whether you are hired to work for Sage. There is more to Sage's story, and we'll get into this shortly. But I wanted to share this specific example with you because it is rare. In all the years I've been meeting with executives and business owners, attempting to unlock the secrets to organizational success, it's rare that the primary consideration is to hire based on fit within the culture and personality over skill. After all, revenue growth, one would surmise, comes from strong marketing, better selling, and high levels of productivity. Interestingly, although these are key components to growth, what I've found is the primary consideration for organizations that are unstoppable when it comes to growing is not skills, but rather culture. Though this isn't a primary consideration for most, there has rarely been a CEO who has disagreed with me when I suggest that finding the right person who fits within a team is often more difficult than finding an employee with the right skill set. After all, skills can be taught. Personality cannot. Sage's story is just one of nearly 24 other examples I'll share with you throughout this book. But, more importantly, I want to come back to the point I made earlier. How you grow an organization's revenue, and in turn its market share, is less reliant on the technology and processes you adopt, and more about how you integrate and involve your people. That is the secret to becoming an unstoppable organization, something we'll immerse ourselves into in the coming chapters. In this book, I'm going to share and show you new ways to market that are less about developing a perfect logo and more about capitalizing on your people. I'll provide examples of companies that are selling differently than their competition and capturing market share as a result. What I've assimilated in this book are dozens of discussions and interviews through my connections with CEOs, executives, and leaders from across North America who are at the helm of some of the fastest-growing organizations in the world. Their success comes down to carefully crafting a system and culture that supports closer connections between their employees and customers. Although the philosophy might seem simple, the complexity comes in building and evolving this connection. This is not an overnight event, but evolves through a series of specific interactions that both educate and involve employees in understanding the organization's vision, customers' needs, and how their performance, language, and interactions have a direct influence over each of these variables. In this book, it is my intention to shed light on how organizations such as Sage, Hilberg and Berk, Centerline, and Blommer Chocolate, as well as dozens of others, have created sustained growth through building these connections. I will provide insights and ideas on how you can do the same for your organization, at little to no cost, by just changing the way you structure, approach, and lead your organization. If this sounds like a trip worth taking, then grab a notepad and buckle in, because this will be a journey that will challenge how you think and, more importantly, how you act. Part 1. What if everything you knew about growth was irrelevant? Referring back to my earlier point about so-called expert advice, there are predominantly two forms of advice that exist in the market today. The first suggests that CEOs, executives, and their teams should hunker down and focus on the tried-and-true methods that support growth, such as brand building, customer acquisition strategies, and sales closing techniques. On the other hand, more and more information on the topic of revenue growth would suggest that all purchasing for products and services is moving online. Hence, the key to growth in today's market is to introduce the software and technology that supports a virtual marketplace. What I'd like you to consider, however, is what if this information was only partially true? In Part 1, we explore these 2 points of view and the specifics behind them, crafting a clear vision of today's customer, how they think, behave, and more importantly, what will make them take action and invest money. 1. Success or failure in business relies on one thing. There is not much new under the sun. Ray Casemore, retired. When I was around the age of 6, my parents took me to the local fair where, like any other kid my age, I took in the rides, various games, and demonstrations. The memory is long past today. However, the one thing that stands out in my mind was the magician who was demonstrating card tricks. I remember being amazed at the magician's ability to allow me to pick a card without him actually seeing the card. And then, after the deck was shuffled, to pick out the very card that I had chosen. Or so it would seem. As a 6-year-old living in a small town, I was absolutely astonished. Magic, and specifically card tricks, actually still amaze me to this day. As I spend time watching specials with magicians such as David Blaine, who, through sleight of hand, is able to amaze complete strangers with card tricks and other more dangerous feats. David, like many other magicians, is able to shift perceptions, making onlookers believe something that isn't real. The question I've asked myself during the past 10 years of research into what makes an organization unstoppable when it comes to growth is, are we being led to believe that the secret to growth isn't what we think it is? For several years now, I've been traveling through North America and speaking at CEO and executive forums such as Vistage International and TEC Canada. In the hundreds of interactions I've had with CEOs, executives, and business owners, our discussions invariably turn to business growth. Sometimes it begins with some innocent small talk. I invariably ask, "How's business?" Other times, the questions come directly from the executive, who is seeking advice on what I've seen working that would help their organization grow. I was motivated to write this book as a result of these discussions. To be honest with you, I think the secrets to becoming an unstoppable organization aren't so secret. Instead, I believe that the real key to growth, the primary consideration necessary to truly becoming an unstoppable organization, has been somehow lost or forgotten amidst the glitz and glamour of new technology, or lost as a result of chasing a solution that some guru might suggest is the key to organizational growth today. Now, before I go any further, let me share with you that I've been an acting management consultant for more than a decade. I have never during this time believed or suggested I was a guru. Rather, I'm a student of the hundreds of executives and organizations with which I've had the pleasure to work for. They have demonstrated time and time again through both their successes and challenges that to grow a sustainable and profitable business in any sector and any region, you need only focus on one thing: people. When I say people, what I'm referring to are your employees. They are the people who make decisions, interact with customers, and invest a good portion of their waking hours to the success of your organization. It's your people who will determine ultimately whether your organization is profitable or not, is successful or not, and will sustain it in a competitive marketplace or not. This might seem like an oversimplification. However, I can reassure you it's not. When you consider that every single person who works within your business today has a different background, experiences, ideas, expectations, and beliefs, both personally and professionally, the objective of aligning your people in support of becoming an unstoppable organization can seem a daunting, if not impossible task. In reality, it can be. However, it's for these very reasons that it's your people who ultimately are the deciding factor between the success and failure of your business. Your people are the key to becoming unstoppable. Throughout this book, I'm going to demonstrate exactly why people who work in your organization today and who may be working in it tomorrow are the single most important factor to its future success. There can be no better area to invest your time, energy, and money than in your people. I'm not suggesting in making this statement, however, that you need to run out and train your people. Nor do I believe that hiring more or better people is the answer. It's not as simple as that. Because, as I alluded to, people are complex beings. We have to think of our organizations as living, breathing entities that contain perceptions, norms, and ideals that ultimately influence the success or failure of the organization. These come from the people who work within it and the customers that it serves. It is our employees who determine the level of success. As measured by sales, productivity, profitability, and the like, an organization achieves. And it's the degree to which our employees feel committed to the success of the organization that will determine that success. Put differently, you can train employees on new processes, add new technology, or bring in highly skilled people. But in the end, it's the employees' own experiences, ideals, and enthusiasm that will determine how well we attract, service, and retain our customers. When my family moved to a new home last year, I contacted a local satellite provider to arrange for equipment and installation of our internet and television. Everything went off without a hitch. About a month later, my wife and I decided we wanted to install a third satellite box to operate an additional television in our basement. So I contacted customer support about getting a third box. I was told that it would cost nearly $400, which seemed ludicrous, considering that our existing dish and 2 boxes had only cost $225 just 30 days prior. As I felt my blood pressure rise, I explained to the customer service agent that the cost made no sense. I was reassured several times that this was the price. As you might imagine, we decided not to add the third box, but instead to move our business to a different provider. A couple weeks after I canceled my service, I received a call from my original provider to ask why I had made the move. When I explained the cost differential and our disappointment, they responded with, "Why, sir, A third box should only have cost you $99, and being a new customer, the agent you spoke with should have offered it for free. Those were my thoughts exactly. But unfortunately, either the original agent didn't know this was the case, which could be for various reasons, or didn't care about the influence this policy may have had on my desire to keep them as my provider. I'm sure you've had similar experiences. And I share this specific example because it highlights something that plagues most organizations today when it comes to becoming unstoppable. Employees of the organization, in their daily roles and supporting its objective, either don't know what to do or how it is to be done, or, alternatively, they simply don't care. This statement isn't meant to be negative in any fashion. It's simply the truth. When it comes to acting in a way that best aligns with organizational objectives and satisfying customer needs, most employees either don't understand what specifically the organization wants or needs them to do, or they've realized that the role they are in or the organization they are with simply isn't for them. Relative to employees not knowing what to do, the underlying issues can be not having sufficient or timely information to make decisions, not having access to the tools to support making decisions, not having the authority to make decisions, not understanding the influence their decisions have on the business, not being clear on the decisions others around them are making. Relative to employees not caring about what they should be doing can result from not enjoying the work, not enjoying the people they work with or for, not having the support of leadership, not believing the organization has their best interests at heart, not believing they can make a difference in the business. Whether an employee doesn't know or doesn't care can really depend on the situation at hand and the employee. But we can draw a hypothesis relative to causes when we consider the environment and challenges most companies face today. Trials and tribulations. My father once told me, "There is not much new under the sun." What he was referring to at the time was my concern as a young teenager about some bullies at my school who were taking names and picking fights. Like most bullies, they strutted their stuff through the halls of my high school, bumping into people, shooting looks at those they didn't like, and welcoming anyone to join them at the front of the school for an attitude adjustment after the final bell. Unfortunately for me, one of the more disliked hoodlums started dating my ex-girlfriend. Yikes. Following which, I presumed it was only a matter of time before I received an official invitation to the school parking lot for an attitude adjustment. As you can imagine, I was somewhat nervous. I shared the situation with my father, hypothetically of course, presenting a story about a guy who was being threatened by others at school, one of whom may have a knife, and asking what my father suggested my friend do if confronted. My father, who I'm sure got into a tussle or two when he was young, shared with me a story about guys carrying chains when he was younger, and suggested that the rumors were most likely not true and started by the bullies themselves as a scare tactic. Although I'm confident my father knew that my hypothetical story was about me, he ended our discussion by sharing this. "Shawn," he said, "there have always been bullies in schools, and there will likely always be bullies. There is nothing new under the sun. Regardless of the difference in our age, there is nothing that you have or will face or experience that I or my father likely didn't experience ourselves. If you're wondering, I was eventually invited for an attitude adjustment after the final bell. And, following my father's sage advice, I went and waited, somewhat nervously, to accept whatever fate was coming my way. After some exchange of words, the bully decided to save bruising his knuckles on my face for another day, which never came. What I've never forgotten, however, is my father's view that there is nothing new under the sun. I find this piece of wisdom surrounding me daily, particularly when reading the news. Rarely is there a story or situation that hasn't happened before. Each time we are faced with a record temperature high, the statement is followed with something like, "The last time we saw a high of this magnitude was back in 1951. When faced with the recession of 2008 and 9, the media, while reporting the severity of economic events happening globally, frequently referred back to the Great Depression of the 1930s. Sure, these situations and others like them might emerge in different forms or ways, but rarely is there something completely new, never having been experienced before. I share the story with you because that lesson my dad taught me comes to mind when considering the trials and tribulations of many organizations, and specifically the CEOs and executives who lead them. Despite the growing complexity of a global marketplace, the continued evolution and influence of technology, and the challenges in adapting to shifts in human behavior and preferences, one thing remains constant. We have always been attempting to find ways to get the most from our people in order to best support our organization and its customers, and this likely will never change. At the core, an organization and its ability to be successful or not relies on its people. That, in essence, is my father's timeless wisdom at work. There is nothing new under the sun. Consider, for example, that according to a survey of 1,300 CEOs conducted by PwC, one of the top concerns globally for CEOs in 2017 is the challenge of balancing man and machine. That is, finding the right skills and technology that will allow them to marry technology with unique human capabilities. Furthermore, what's even more interesting about the survey responses is that a significant percent have found and continue to believe that technology has and will have a lesser effect on the growth and success of their companies than they once predicted back in 1998. What we can further glean from these insights is that regardless of the extent to which technology has and will continue to influence the growth of an organization, people and their unique talents and capabilities become ever more important. This isn't to say that continued developments in artificial intelligence and other technologies won't influence this perception in years to come. But it's important to note that when survey respondents were asked about their most pressing needs, finding and retaining talent were amongst the top 3 areas identified. More specifically, when asked about which specific skills were most important for them to find in the people they needed, the following 5 skills were identified. 61% said problem solving was a crucial skill. 61% identified that adaptability was essential. 75% suggested leadership was necessary. 77% identified creativity and innovation. 64% selected emotional intelligence as a key skill. The results of the survey highlight a few critical points about growing an organization in today's global economy, and they are in stark contrast to what many have believed in recent years, mostly on account of what experts have been suggesting. Specifically, despite the once strong belief that technology was going to change the face of business and people as we know it, this has actually not been the case. Although technology and its proper development and adaptation are crucial to remaining competitive, it has not and will not take the place of people as the most important resource for an organization seeking to grow and be more profitable. Moreover, the more reliant we become on technology, the more we realize the importance of specific and unique human skills that can never be fully or effectively adopted by technology. The question that logically presents itself, then, is how can we avoid becoming enamored with the latest and greatest technology, forgetting about the importance of our people? In my experience, the answer lies in what we have always known. A great organization, one that is successful and sustainable, is built on people. You might believe this isn't much of a revolutionary statement, and that you are already placing your people first. However, to confirm the extent to which this might be true, let me share with you a simple exercise I use with my clients to assess the priority of their people relative to becoming an unstoppable organization. Step 1. Add up the total investment you have made in technology during the last 3 years. Costs typically include researching, buying, and introducing technology, including training, annual registration costs, and so on. Add to this any ongoing costs you have for existing technology, such as annual subscriptions, upgrades, and storage fees. Last, add all online costs, including website development, maintenance, and so on. Any personnel costs associated with this technology should also be lumped into this bucket. Step 2. Add up the total investment you have made in further developing the skills of your people. This typically comes from the training budget set forth by each department, and may include personal development for employees. For example, time management, or group development. For example, leadership training. Specifically, do not include development that is considered supportive versus necessary. For instance, if you have compensated employees for furthering their education, but this education cannot or is not being applied on the job, then do not continue to pay for it. For bonus material to assist you in your journey toward becoming an unstoppable organization, make sure to visit unstoppableorganization.com. When you compare these two costs, which is higher? In my experience, it's typically the former more so than the latter. The investments made to introduce and maintain technology far outweigh the investments made in developing people. If you want a simpler test to see this in action, pull up the
Sample complete. Ready to continue?